I think in any journey towards the cloud, we cannot ignore a company called VMware because virtualization is the first step towards cloud computing, as we all know, and VMware is almost synonymous with virtualization. In that context, let me welcome Mr. Vinod Krishnan, Sales Director, Advanced Technologies, VMware, who will talk about a customer's journey to the cloud. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Vinod Krishnan.
Hi, good afternoon, and I know it's a precarious slot between you and lunch. How many of you could do economic times today morning or Dilbert online? And I'm sure this was not coincidental. Some of you would have definitely complained with the overdose of cloud over the last 24 hours. Right, so for those of you who can't read, it's really about a board discussion and somebody was saying, I thought so far that I could add inputs without really understanding what's going on. I could get away by saying that let's virtualize everything, put it on the cloud, and people used to give me claps, right? So my whole attempt today is not really to get into technology as such, but really to get our thought process kicking on. How do we strategize around our movement to cloud, right? Every time that we speak about cloud, think about cloud, the notion is so that we can move lock, stock, and barrel onto public cloud, get our SLAs on Amazon's headache, and then go back home and relax, right? But we all know the fact is not that, right? We've built an infrastructure over a period of time. We've built data centers. We built careers out of managing data centers, and it's not going to go away very soon, right? It's going to live with us. We're going to probably take a slow and steady movement towards a public cloud. But to start with, we would have to look at what we can optimize internally, right? So my session today, over the next 20-25 minutes, will try and kindle some thoughts around what are the different approaches that customers have taken, what are the different things that they've done to internally move what they have, optimize what they have into a cloud model, be a public, be a private, be a hybrid cloud model, and also some of the things that we got to do other than just focusing at infrastructure. So my name is Vinod Krishnan. I'm responsible for selling some of the advanced technology product lines within VMware. This is what we have as agenda, and we'll try and get over it very quickly without exceeding the time that we have, right? So we'll very quickly on VMware, what we do for a living, where we are in the market, some of the priority focus areas that we have set for ourselves as a company, essentially to help customers take the journey towards the cloud. And what is the typical journey that we see and observe customers taking. Right, so very quickly, we are a $3.77 billion company selling into most of the large Fortune 1000, Fortune 100 customers. Fairly good, well-balanced, good money in the bank, very good company who can invest a lot of money back into the research essentially, right? You look at any of the mark names across the market, you would see that all of them would have adopted VMware as a standard building block, standard layer of virtualization for virtualizing their x86 infrastructure. As of mid of last year, we are about 80-81% market share of all the installed VMs world over. Now this is very critical because as the MC said a few minutes back, fundamental to cloud computing is virtualization, right? If there is a notion of economic savings in cloud, it is because you are virtualizing the underlying infrastructure. You are squeezing more out of what you have in the underlying infrastructure, right? So the stepping stone to cloud computing is always virtualization. So this puts us in a very enviable position to help customers undertake the journey towards the cloud, right? Having the market share that we have with virtualization. So what is the approach that we take? Right? While there could be a nirvana out there of jumping into a public cloud, as I said before, that there is a problem that we got to take care of, which is our existing data center, people, our investments that we've made, and how do we take that gradually move them onto a cloud. So VMware has a very prescriptive approach on how do we guide our customers through this journey. First and foremost, in the first step, understand what you have internally within your infrastructure, right? Figure out how to optimize that, get more juice out of the infrastructure. How do you get more business agility out of the infrastructure in the next phase, right? Once you've optimized, once you've reduced what you can in terms of footprint, how do I bring in more business agility onto the same infrastructure, right? How do I bring in an Amazon-like agility, like somebody mentioned about scale up, scale down, have resources on demand, service users as the users need it, if possible let users provision services on their own, right? How do I bring it within my infrastructure? And third, and maybe the last but not the least, right? How do I translate all of that into a more engaged workforce? End of the day, you are doing all of this to ensure that you're getting more productivity, more work done, more revenue earned for your company. Right? So you could do all this inside your data center, inside your IT infrastructure, but if your workforce is not able to utilize them correctly, it's a mission uneconomical. And so that's the three-step journey that VMware takes the customers through, advises the customers through to fulfill their cloud journey. So what is the relevance for all this, right? Why are we spending 48 hours talking about cloud? And most of you would know of it, right? Last 2 days, the landscape is changing. It's really not the IT that we know of. The consumers are changing. It's the Facebook generation which is more demanding. The devices are changing. Access to applications are changing. The time zones are changing, right? So it's a different world out here than what we were used to 5 years, 10 years back. The perspectives are changing, right? IT so far has been associated with physical devices, right? You think of IT, you think of PC, you think of server, think of storage, think of networking. Today, people don't even care about what is behind IT, right? They just need services to be available, right? And that's the so what is that VMware is focusing? How are we trying to break this journey into meaningful, smaller activities that customers can take one step at a time, optimizing things at a time, and moving towards the destination that they want? First and foremost, infrastructure that you have, the existing data centers that you have, make it more flexible, more agile, and more ready for the cloud, right? Make the infrastructure, internal infrastructure that you have into a private cloud. Make it ready to federate with a public cloud, which means make it ready to talk to a public cloud should it be needed, right? Ensure that you can see the capacity with the public cloud vendor and the capacity that you have inside on a single pane, so that you can start planning where a workload should sit. Do I run it inside here? What is the cost of me running it inside? This service, what is the cost of running it with a public cloud provider? Right? What is the business risk associated with me running it outside than here, right? For many businesses, the application is the business, right? It could be cheaper running outside, but then am I really ready to run my application outside if that is my whole business, right? So you get to have the flexibility in the first place, seeing both the infrastructure, your capacity on demand from a public cloud vendor, your internal capacity as a federated cloud, as a hybrid cloud, so that you can start taking business decisions. Rather than taking business decisions for IT, you start taking business decisions for business and let IT follow. While you do this all to the infrastructure, after all, you're doing all of this for your applications to be faster, quicker, better, right? Gone are the days where one could afford a 1-year rollout cycle for an application. Applications live for weeks now, right? They die their natural death in a month's time, right? How do you create faster applications which are quicker to go to market? How do you make applications that can scale out as and when it is needed, scale down if it is not needed, and is quick to be killed if they have to be killed, right? And all of that using the underlying infrastructure that you optimized already. And the third layer that we are focusing on as a company is how do you deliver all of these applications that you've created on a very agile cloud-like infrastructure to the right user, onto the right device, in the right fashion, right? Users are no longer going to access an application sitting in office through a dedicated PC, right? You look around, you see people using tablets, people browsing emails, people getting productive while they are hearing onto a session, right? How do you enable those workforce to be productive, at the same time not compromising on security, on your governance, all your compliance, all your security needs, etc., etc. Right? So essentially, if you think through, what we are saying is, it's not our cloud, it's not a VMware cloud that all of you come onto a VMware cloud. I'll guarantee you 99.99. I'm going to take care of all of it. I'm saying each of you customers have got a business to run. You got your IT infrastructure. You got to convert that into your cloud the way it is optimized for your business. We can provide you a framework to achieve that end destination. We'll look at some of the customers who have undertaken that journey along with us and reached the destination, right? New York Stock Exchange. 1/3 of the world's money flows through the NYSE flow, right? They have the first public cloud vendor who's offering a public cloud for the BFSI sector within the firewalls. They've undertaken a journey with VMware. SAP, for instance, run all their entire workloads on a VMware virtualized cloud platform. There are some of the customers within India who have undertaken the journey with us, some stages of adoption. Some of them could be on virtualization, some of them could be moving on to a private cloud, some of them looking at a hybrid federated cloud model, etc. Just so that you get a sense of what kind of customers are we talking to. So again, to capture, our focus fundamentally is on, we will go deeper 2 minutes into each of that. but the focus fundamentally is just so that we get a view of how do we guide customers, how do we guide users to move through the journey of cloud, fundamentally take the infrastructure, make it cloud ready, right? Make it cloud ready, bring in the management, bring in the automation to make the infrastructure far more agile, far more resilient for failure. How do you start looking at applications, modernizing those applications or writing new applications if you have to for the cloud era? Scalable, faster, quicker applications for the cloud era that can go to market very quickly. And last but not the least, how do you deliver those applications running on an agile infrastructure onto the right users, through the right devices in the right manner. So on the first, quickly to go through the cloud infrastructure, as I mentioned about before, the fundamental priority is to reduce the complexity, right? You just can't have hundreds and thousands of servers being managed by admins running all around the place, trying to pull cable out, pull cable in, etc., right? Reduce the complexity, virtualize it, get all of them into a shared pool, right? Have a pool of compute, so much of CPU, so much of memory, network, storage, right? Get them all into a pool so that you can start metering it out to the application, start giving resources on demand to the applications, right? This also leads you into dramatically reducing cost, right? Through efficiencies, through pooling, through creating a shared infrastructure, you start reducing cost drastically, getting public cloud kind of economics within your infrastructure, the best of both worlds that you can get. And lastly, you bring in the agility and the flexibility that you need, right? Bring in the levels of automation that is needed, bring in the level of management that is needed, bring in the level of self-provisioning that is needed, bring in the level of chargeback that is needed to bring in accountability, etc., to make that infrastructure as a shared utility infrastructure that you can start giving onto businesses, onto users. So these are some of the products. We'll just rush through it quickly. Most of you would be aware of vSphere 5, which is the fundamental virtualization stack that we have. So we bring in things like disaster recovery on top of it, operations management on top of it for you to get predictive visibility into what can probably go wrong within an infrastructure over the next 24 hours, over the next 48 hours, so that you start managing your SLAs better than being reactive as most of the cases today are. Right? You start bringing in security so that even if you have situations where you start moving your virtual machines from your internal private cloud onto public cloud, you start letting the security flow along with the infrastructure rather than depending on the security of a third party to define how you should run your business, right? How you should run your applications. And lastly, as I said, you start managing both the infrastructure as though they belong to you through a single pane, so that you start taking business decisions correctly on where to host the infrastructure or the applications over a period of time. While we do this, most of you would be thinking, yesterday's context is no longer relevant, right? Today's management, all is about how do I manage an application all the way down. If my application is not behaving well, I see where in server is it running, which server is it running, that server is connected to which storage, I start troubleshooting the storage, through what network, I go onto the hard disk and figure out what is going wrong, right? It's all vertical, siloed way of management. When you think of cloud, when you think of a hybrid cloud, that context has no relevance at all, right? You start looking at management horizontal, because each of the layers are now very loosely coupled, running on top of the other, right? You can't start tracing from an application all the way down to the hardware. You would rather start looking at management as horizontal layers that start making sense, right? So we started looking at some of those ways of managing the infrastructure, the new age infrastructure, and how do you get that correctly onto your customers. So we spoke about enterprise hybrid cloud, the fact that the internal data center is not going to go away very soon. The most optimum way, and you look at Gartner, they've come out with a study sometime back saying that of all the enterprises who are going to undertake the cloud journey, the one that does the hybrid cloud would probably save 15-20% more than the ones who take one of those extreme approaches. So we are working with a lot of cloud providers. You would see some of them outside. We'll have some of the names here. These are essentially data center providers, right? Who stand up VMware powered cloud within the data centers, more like the Intel Inside, right? So you could potentially go to a data center provider and say, I'm running VMware Inside in my organization. I have a virtualized private cloud. I want a VMware powered cloud in your data center, right? For me to take capacity on demand, and we start managing both of them together. So we've got partners across the world who are part of the program, who could give you capacity on demand on an underlying VMware platform, right? For you to manage all of it together. These are some of the partners in the country who offer similar services. Coming onto the cloud application platform, right? While you've made the infrastructure agile and cloud ready, how do you start looking at the applications and figure out whether you got to modernize those applications for cloud? Are they really scale out like some of the speakers said before? How much time does it take for me to market those applications? How quickly can I develop those applications, right? So Spring, most of you would be familiar with the Spring framework, which is a VMware entity now. Most of the enterprise Java development happens around the Spring framework, right? How do you build applications for the new devices quickly, faster? Again, leveraging some of those new frameworks. How do you support those applications with scale out databases, right? Ram spoke about a vertical scale up database being irrelevant in a scale out cloud environment, right? So how do you build NoSQL scale out databases, a data grid, not even a database, that can span across geographies, across nodes, for you to get instant CRM capabilities, for instance, right? In-memory databases for you to get instant CRM, for instance, right? And ensure that you get to deploy all of them on a virtualized cloud, so that whatever you've achieved in terms of cost optimization, shrinking the data center, gets translated into improved application performance as well. So while you modernize your applications, as I said, also support it by building a data grid that can give you better business responses as to customer needs. And last but not the least, we are coming out with our own version of a public PaaS, a platform as a service, essentially focused around Spring, Java, some of the new development platforms like Ruby on Rails, etc. Right? Cloudfoundry.org, you could potentially develop applications on cloudfoundry.org, have a version of it running inside within your firewalls if you want for you to do your development, publish it, deploy it on a public cloud if you want to, all of them using the same underlying VMware standards, so that you not only start developing applications for the cloud, you start deploying it with a public cloud vendor or within a data center, and we'll also look at how do we deliver that to the right users now. Right. Most of us know about the problem that we are facing now, right? Multi devices. We thought it is a passing fad a year back, but now it's a reality that we just can't live with one device. We've got phones which are powerful than laptops, we've got tablets, and we've got what more coming in. And more than IT figuring out, the CEO of the company is coming back to the IT and say, my son has played enough with iPad, I got to figure out some productive applications with iPad. And IT has no option but to make the iPad useful to the organization now, right? So IT is really trying to figure out, how do I make users happy with all these devices that they bring in? How do I ensure that I'm not compromising on my control, on my agility, on my security, while encouraging users to use all of that? Right, so what we are fundamentally creating there is a platform for the next generation computing, right? Next generation end user computing. How do I take data out of a PC, abstract it, put it into a central data store? How do I take compute which is logged onto a PC, take it into a central place, start giving it to the users as and when they need it? How do I take intelligence out of the PCs and start delivering it to the users as and when they need it based on their authentication, right? So essentially simplify the way end user computing happens today, bring it, centralize it all so that you can manage it through a central portal, IT can manage it through a central portal, and start delivering it to the right device in the right manner, right? For instance, if there's a user who's bringing in, through an iPad, how do I deliver the enterprise application with the right interface onto the iPad? If it is a mobile user, how do I take the same enterprise applications, customize it, and deliver it to the mobile users in the right fashion, right? And all of that not only in a secure manner, but in a manner that is controlled by IT. And this is where the real liberation comes from, right? Can I let my users get a self-provisioning capability for applications, right? Instead of IT delivering applications, instead of IT deciding what applications should a user need, let business decide. Let user come on to a provisioning portal like this, like what you're seeing now, like an Apple iStore that we are familiar with, like an Android store that we are familiar with. Start provisioning applications for themselves. Click on a button, start provisioning applications. Obviously, the master set of applications is being controlled by IT in the backend, but then you're really letting users self-provision applications on their own. Right? So we have deployed this internally, it's still a beta product. We're coming out with it over the next 1 week or so. So this essentially summarizes our approach to getting customers move their current infrastructure onto a cloud, rather than looking at a forklift approach of moving onto a public cloud overnight, which most of us know is not a practical option, and do it in a very systematic, prescriptive way, so that you do one at a time, that IT can manage, IT can move one step at a time. Right. So again, to recapture, look at infrastructure first, look at how you can manage, consolidate, optimize your infrastructure. Look at your applications, how do you modernize the applications, how do you write new applications in the right manner so that it leverages the underlying cloud infrastructure, and start delivering it to the users in the right way so that business gets benefited in the long run. So that's all I have from VMware. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take it. Otherwise, I'm out of time. Thank you.
Questions? Yeah. No? Okay. Thank you so much for that wonderful talk. We'd like to offer you a small token of our appreciation.
Thanks, man. Thank you.